Hey guys, check it out. It's a hostage situation. What will Elalaria here do? You see, she is currently stood on top of an active goblin landmine engineered by yours truly. And if she takes a single step in any direction, this landmine is going to explode, possibly killing her in one shot. However, despite these unfortunate circumstances, she does have a few options available to her.
I need help!
Option number 1, she can give up, log off, uninstall the game, go outside and do something much more meaningful with her life. Option number 2, she can pathetically whine and beg in world chat for somebody to layer her away from this situation. By the way, using layering to do this is sweaty and pathetic, and before any of you ask, yes, I have done it myself. And option number 3, she can bravely and heroically turn to face me, step off of the landmine, risk blowing herself up, all for the opportunity to cut me down where I stand. Place your bets, make your guesses. Which of these options do you think she chose? Congratulations, if you picked option 1, you were fucking incorrect. She picked option 4. Wait around for the landmine to disappear because it only has a duration of 1 minute. Naturally, I had to respond to this, so I sapped her and placed down another mine. She then decided to pick a different option. Option number 5. Just jump away. The landmine cannot blow you up unless you give it permission. Anyway, at that point I gave up and stabbed her in the back. Welcome to another Mordots video. As you can see, I've been getting up to some antics, some funny little jokes you might say. You sap someone who's a grey level, put down a landmine under them and let nature run its course. Unfortunately, this never really killed anyone. Even the lowest level players I could find would still survive it on a sliver of health. But hey, what are you gonna do? Originally, I was going to have an entire video dedicated to showing you stuff like this, but then Blizzard turned around and said, "Oh, by the way, you're getting phase 3 in 10 days, you stupid bitch!" Due to this, I realised I wasn't going to have enough time to make that video before phase 3 dropped, but I can still give you the abridged version of what I've been getting up to. Went to the Blood Moon a whole bunch of times. I think I'm part of the 1% of players who actually enjoys this event. Grinded out enough coins to get the cat and this dagger, which my best in slot list told me to avoid, but I couldn't care less, because when I activate it, it does this. Also went to Gnomeregon for pretty much every reset. I thought this raid was absolutely fantastic. Come on! Let's go! Holy shit!
Fuck me.
We saw the mount drop once. Gandalf won it, which was nice because he hadn't bought his mount skill, so he just got to save 50 gold. Oh, and this time around I actually got my best in slot dagger. In fact, everybody got my best in slot dagger. Toxic Revenger 2 dropped like 7 times for us. They changed how the battleground queuing system works, which meant you could actually queue up as a solo player now and not get shit on by a pre-made 10-man, and that was fun. What else did I get up to? Oh, right, I distracted dozens, maybe even hundreds of people straight off the docks in Booty Bay. This is one of the main reasons why I play Rogue in the first place. Just getting to do weird petty shit like this to people really puts a smile on my face. There were some other funny overworld antics that happened, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you those stories another time. Before we move on though, I do want to tell you what I spent most of my time doing in phase 2, and surprisingly it wasn't stabbing people in the back, it was mining in Myrone. During phase 2, the dungeon of Myrone was not open. All of the bosses were busy playing Uno or scalping 4090s or something, but the entrance caves into Myrone were still accessible. And what do these caves have besides a pleasing unique aesthetic and a bunch of elite mobs? That's right, mithril nodes. I don't really have footage to show you of this because all I was doing was mining, but I can tell you that I farmed these caves extensively. To give you an idea of just how much time I spent in these caves, sometimes instead of a mithril node, you will get true silver instead. These are quite rare, so you shouldn't expect to see a lot of them, which explains why my bank hold has 195 fucking true silver. And the funniest part, despite spending literally hundreds of hours down here draining this place dry for all it's worth, at the end of phase 2, I was still fucking broke. But hey, don't judge me. I got the gold I needed for all of the important stuff, like Gnomeregon raid consumables, buying my mount, and giving John back the 200 gold I owed him from the last leveling race. Oh yeah, I should probably start talking about the leveling race, huh? At this point, you guys know the fucking deal, right? Myself and John raced to the level cap in the new phase as soon as it launches. My performance in the previous 2 races was, shall we say, subpar, but this time, guys, I swear, this time it's gonna be different. If you remember, one of the reasons why I lost the last leveling race was that I chose to go into it without doing any preparation beforehand. This was, how do I put it gently, a terrible fucking choice, and I regretted my decision almost immediately. However, this this time around I was, comparably at least, not being a fucking idiot. I had no handicap placed on myself this time for obvious reasons, and I actually had more options available to me than Drum did. The best example of what I'm talking about here are probably the Dark Riders. These 7 mobs can be spawned in different zones of the game, and each one drops an item you use to complete a quest. If you hand in all 7 of these items, you get a rune from the quest giver, which is what Drum did during phase 2 and what I never bothered to do. This meant that I effectively had 7 extra mini quests to hand in right at the start of the leveling race, and this is just one example of the preparation we were doing. I'm not going to go over all of it because we would be here for a long time, and also you're going to see it in the race itself, but let's just say this time around I was prepared. There were a couple of other things worth mentioning. For instance, Blizzard gave a 50% XP boost from 40 to 50 right out of the gate this time. This meant that the current leveling bracket was going to be a lot faster to get through than the 25 to 41 was on launch, and that was a very welcome change for both mine and Drum's sanity. And speaking of our sanity, this time around we had an extra rule. We could only race when we were both online and participating. This meant that we could, eat and sleep without the other person rushing off ahead while we were doing so. However, you may remember that for the first leveling race we did, I said this: he has the advantage of skill and I have the advantage of time. Well, as of this leveling race, I no longer had this advantage, so I was going to have to beat Drum using my own skill? Man, this is gonna fucking suck. And of course, it wouldn't have been a leveling race without a little wager. For the first race, we bet 5 gold, and for the second race, we bet 200 gold. So I'm sure you're wondering, 500 gold this time? Maybe even 1,000? Surely not 2,000, right? Well, let me tell you, for this leveling race, we decided to bet 0 gold. Nothing. Not a single copper coin. Instead, this time around, we decided to compete for something far more interesting. Also, this is like the final thing I'm going to be explaining, so we're getting to the leveling race, I promise. Instead of gold, this time around, we were going to be competing for a single, one-time use item snipe. If at any point the two of us are in a dungeon or raid together and an item drops that the loser of the race wins, but the winner wants, the winner can just take it. You could use it on set item tokens because we both share those, or best in slot items that we both want, or an even scarier concept, saving it until level 60 to use on some crazy shit like the bindings for Thunder Fury. Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. This prize was worth more than gold. This prize was something special, something that I just had to win. I was already 0 for 2 in the leveling races and I couldn't let Drum get the hat trick, so this time, finally, I had to get my revenge. I finished up my elaborate, extensive questing preparations, and before I knew it, the phase 3 pre-patch had dropped. Everyone was fucking around pretending to be a crate or a bush, myself included.
This ain't a normal bush. Go said it is.
And then, after the novelty of these weird items wore off on us, it was time. April 4th had arrived and phase 3 was nearly upon us. I spent my final moments of phase 2 getting some last minute mithril and killing this rare centaur, which I saw about 20 times due to how often I was down here. And when I say my final moments of phase 2 were spent here, I really mean that. You see, my original plan was to log back on later before the phase dropped, half to Orgrimmar, and maybe get some B-roll footage sat around on the Orgrimmar bank roof with a bunch of people who were waiting for phase 3. But Blizzard didn't like that idea. They didn't think it was okay. They didn't think it was kosher. Instead, they had a better plan. That's right, the fucking servers went down. Man, fuck this, I'm cracking my Sour Patch Kids bag open. I don't give a fuck. Safe to say, the leveling race was off to a rocky start. 9 PM came and went, and yet all of us were still sat, staring at the dark portal. During this time, all of the worst places on the internet like Reddit and Discord were losing their fucking minds not being able to log into their video game the split second it should have been available. So I did what I do best. Sowed a bit of chaos. I hopped onto the Crusader Strike Discord and posted the following message. Guys, it's back up. I just got in. Go load up quick. I was obviously lying when I said this, but it still provoked the kind of reactions that you would expect. But then, only moments later, everybody started parroting my message and flooding the entire Discord with it, so that was quite entertaining. Anyway, the servers were still fucked, and trolling the Crusader Strike Discord was only fun for so long, which meant that myself and the guild had to find other ways to entertain ourselves.
Mordot's next thumbnail.
But eventually, over an hour after phase 3 launched, the EU servers came back online and the leveling race could finally begin. Oh fuck, we're in. We're in, baby. I logged into the optimal starting position for a leveling race, fucking Myrone, and immediately had to go to the bank in Thunderbluff to retrieve my quest items. By the way, I cannot even begin to tell you just how stressed this leveling race made me. The previous 2 leveling races were kind of tests of endurance. How long can you stay awake? How long can you keep playing for? However, this time around it was mainly going to come down to efficiency and planning. How well did you plan out your route and how well are you going to execute that plan? This was going to be a problem for me because while I'd done a ton of pre-questing, I hadn't put that much thought into the order in which I was going to hand stuff in. But it was too late to panic about all of that. We were doing it live, and all I had to do was get shit done as fast as I could. As I landed down at Ratchet, I noticed that the docks were a little bit more crowded than usual.
I thought I'd drop in and say hi. I'm going to go back to lameness. Let me know how the race goes. Congratulations, John, in advance.
Fuck! As myself and this entourage of players arrived in Booty Bay, I handed in my first of many pre-completed quests and then immediately took a little nap because I forgot to use my sleeping bag. Also, despite the fact that the leveling race had just started and nothing had happened yet, I had managed to already make a mistake. I was just in Thunderbluff and I didn't hand in my Thunderbluff quests. Fuck. Already my lack of planning was causing some issues for me, and believe me when I tell you, this became a reoccurring problem. I picked up and handed in the necessary quests at Booty Bay, got a bunch of quest items out of the bank, and then took a flight over to Swamp of Sorrows. This was also a mistake, by the way. What I should have done was fly to Gromgol base camp, run over to Hem and Nessingwary and hand in Bangalash's head before flying to Swamp of Sorrows. Anyway, I went and handed in this quest, which you start via a grey weapon of all things, to this ugly fucking bastard, and then went over to Deadwind Pass so I could hand in every single one of the Dark Rider quests. I gotta do it. I don't care if I'm in a race. The first kill of P3. Fuck them. I told myself at the start of the race that I was going to have to try really hard not to gank everyone I saw, and already I was struggling with that. But what goes around comes around, and about 30 seconds after this, I was reminded of my own mortality.
Oh, the blink.
Oh, fuck!
No, pass.
No, I got him. I haven't got him. Humbled and defeated, I took Resurrection Sickness because it was faster, and then flew back to Booty Bay to take even more quest items out of the bank. And at this moment, I also realised that I just straight up forgot to do one of my pre-quests. Did I not pick up the 12? What was I after? Zanza was a mixture. Did I just not do this quest?
Yeah, I hard to kill.
I just didn't do it. I just forgot to do this one. Like I said, it became a reoccurring problem. I'm also going to stop pointing out every mistake I made because if I tell you about all of them, this video is never going to end. I flew back over to Swamp of Sorrows to hand in a quest I forgot to take out of the bank previously, and then went over to Badlands to hand in a whole plethora of quests which resulted in me getting the nifty stopwatch. What a fitting item for this leveling race. Oh, and Ding41 by the way, say grats in my comment section. We were now officially 10% of the way through, and I was just getting started. I flew into Gromgol base camp during the blood moon, so the guards nearly turned me into a red stain on the floor.
Nobody breaks the law on my watch.
I went over to the Nessingwary camp to hand in the head, tried to sneak back into Gromgol, and was swiftly reminded that I was not allowed to be there. So I thought, fuck it, time to half the Thunderbluff, hand in all of my quests there, grab more quest items out of the bank, and then fly down to Camp Majachi and Foralos. Handed in a bunch of quests here, and then immediately took a flight over to Tanaris to, you guessed it, pick up and hand in more goddamn quests. After that, I had to make a pit stop at the Shimmering Flats. Can you guess why? We have a winner. You are correct. I came here to hit level 42. Say grats in my comment section. Again. After that, I went back to Tanaris to take a flight over to Duskwallow Marsh. Side note, did anyone else here used to call it Duskwallow Marsh with a K? I always thought that's what it was called until like Classic 2019, I think, and then realised it wasn't called that, and now I just feel like a fucking idiot, so... Anyway, as I landed down in the marsh itself, I was feeling pretty good about how I was doing. That is, until I realised that one of the quest givers I needed to talk to here was fucking dead. One of the quests in the area involves you fighting and killing Overlord Mokmarok, something I was planning on doing after I handed in a bunch of other quests that I had to the guy. Alas, there were already many players looking to kill the Overlord. I tried to weasel my way into one of the groups.
Anyone got a space for a humble little troll like myself?
But I was only met with cold stares and deafening silence. Rather than wait in the queue, I decided I would run halfway across the zone to hand in a different quest entirely, and when I got back, the queue to kill Mokmarok was even larger, so I thought, fuck this, I'm gonna fly to Orgrimmar. Upgraded my abilities, upgraded my cape, and then took a flight over to Ratchet. Hopped on the boat, handed some stuff in Booty Bay, and then for the first time since the leveling race started, I was actually going to be doing a quest. I know, I couldn't believe it either. I thought I was just going to be handing stuff in for 10 levels straight. I placed the required quest items in the ruined lifeboat, waited for the elite sea giant to show up, and then immediately started kiting him back to the Booty Bay Bay bruises because there was no universe I killed this guy 1v1. Unfortunately, this was a fruitless endeavor. I didn't do enough damage to get kill credit, which meant I couldn't get the quest item, and I had just wasted all of this time. But I wasn't going to let it get me down. I grabbed the flight to Gromgol and hopped on the blimp to Undercity. At this point, I was feeling pretty good about how things were going. I was about halfway through level 42, which meant I was about a quarter of the way done with the race entirely. And also, at this point, John was only level 41, so despite my numerous fuck-ups, I had to be doing something right. As I sat on that blimp looking out into the world, I thought to myself, yeah, maybe this'll be the time. After 3 leveling races, maybe this'll be the one where I get my victory royale. For the previous 2 leveling races, all I knew was struggle and defeat, but this time I was going to keep going. I was going to get my payback, and I would be victorious. So I'm a fucking idiot. I have no words. So yeah, I accidentally had a brain fog moment when I walked off the blimp and fucking died, but I mean, come on guys, who here hasn't done that, am I right? Guys? Anyone? Fuck. Anyway, it wasn't long after this before Drom and myself decided that we needed some sleep. Like I said earlier, we were only allowing ourselves to level while both of us were online, which meant we could go to bed at comparably more reasonable times than the previous races. I went over to the Undercity and handed in the star, the hand and the heart, which I should have done earlier because the Skull of Impending Doom would have made running around to all of these quest givers way quicker. On my way to the hinterlands, I stopped and grabbed the max rank of first aid and then went and finished up one of the final pre-quests I had lined up for now. As I got back to Thunderbluff and was about to log off, some random dude came up to me and put a lockbox in a trade window without saying anything.
It's locked.
Not even a hello? A how do you do? Just a fucking box? People these days have no manners. He didn't say anything, so I cancelled the trade and fucked off. Even I can afford to lose that 10 silver. Went down into Mulgore to use my sleeping bag because, fun fact, you can't use them in rested areas like cities. Went back up to Thunderbluff after I got my buff and finally fucked off to sleep. And now for a quick intermission. Up until this point in the leveling race, I've shown you pretty much every single thing I've done in order. Part of the reason I did this was to demonstrate just how many quests and quest starting items I prepared in advance. And I have a couple of those left, but I've shown you the vast majority of them, which means at this point we're switching over to questing and dungeoning and, you know, playing the game normally. The reason why I bring this up is that I'm going to be skipping over a bunch of stuff from this point on because it just wasn't that interesting. Like, I could show you every kill I got, every quest I did, every flight path I took, and believe me, I took a lot of flight paths. And sure, I could flower up the footage by putting a bunch of fucking memes on the screen, but let's be honest, I've already done that quite a lot in this video. In summary, what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to show you all of the best bits going forward, and the race might seem kind of fast because I'm going to skip all of the boring stuff, but trust me when I say you're not missing anything interesting. The following morning, I logged in and took care of some boring stuff while I was waiting for Drom, and as soon as he was ready to go, the race was back on. The first thing I did was go back to Duskwallow Marsh in order to finally deal with Mokmarok, because unsurprisingly, there was no queue for him at 10 in the morning. But it didn't matter, because I forgot to bring crippling poison, which meant I couldn't kite him to death, got myself killed, and had to leave anyway. And since the guy was still an orange level for me, I decided, you know what, fuck Mokmarok for now. I'm gonna go down to Feralis instead. I did some questing for a bit, joined up with Drom to help him get a rune, and then went and hit a level 43. Found some level 50 human while I was killing bugs, and decided that a better game for her to play was Shadowlands Classic. She nearly got me on the run back, but I had blind up, so that was kind of a solved matchup. Human warrior players, am I right? Anyway, I killed her again, finished up my questing in Feralis, and then went back to Stranglethorn Vale.
Later. My skill level isn't high enough.
Mopped up some more kills, got back to questing, and not long after that, I hit level 44, and at this point I still had high hopes for winning this race. After all, Drom had only hit level 43 as I got back to Booty Bay, which meant I was still pretty much an entire level ahead. And not long after this, myself, Drom and Sokar decided we were going to go and do our first dungeon of Phase 3, Older Man. While I was waiting for the others, I made my way back to the Badlands and finally finished up the questline for my Skull of Impending Doom. But wouldn't you know it, I fucked up again. I forgot to grab the final dungeon quest, which was in the Undercity, so I had to grab a flight across half of a continent. Except this time it was a double fuck up, because Jom already had the quest and could have shared it to me, so I had just wasted even more of my time. Anyway, we spent a bunch of time outside the dungeon figuring out who needed what quests and what order to do stuff in, and then eventually we got started with the run itself. Since it was an older man run, I decided that now was an appropriate time to activate my trinket I got back in Gnomeregon, which quite literally turns you into a fucking troglodyte. The transformation only lasts for 5 minutes, but that was plenty of time for us to slaughter nearly every other trog in this dungeon. Only one may survive. The run itself went pretty smooth. I won this BOE blue gun, which I'm actually still using to this day. We took down all of the bosses, eventually made it to the 4 pillar men. Took down Arcadeus and got to cash in that sweet XP from the platinum discs. After that, Jom, Sokar and myself went back outside the dungeon to finish up one of the quests, which took us absolutely for fucking ever. Seriously, I have this 30-minute piece of footage which is just us mass murdering dwarves. We kited this rare spawn to death, which dropped nothing relevant, and then fittingly, that same quest I fucked up getting earlier was the one I handed in to hit level 45. At this point, I was still feeling pretty good about how I was doing, so I headed over to Stranglethorn to give the local troll population what I can only describe as the Medivh treatment. Got ganked by a literal animal and then headed over to try and fight King Muckler. However, I wasn't even good enough to kite one of the regular gorillas to death, so this time I was smart and gave up before I even tried. Went and finished up some of the other quests I had to do, and then took a flight all of the way from Gromgol to the Hinterlands. I wasn't kidding about the flight paths earlier. I think I spent more time on flights during this leveling race than I spent leveling. If I had optimized my route better and spent less time, you know, up in the air, I probably could have had an entire extra level at this point, but I was still in the lead, so who gives a fuck. Spent some time questing around here, and then took a ride down to Tarren Mill, where I handed in a quest which let me hit level 46. After that, I immediately half-stoned over to Orgrimmar, and that's when I saw it, an unread letter in my mailbox. Oh fucking boy. I wasn't really worried about this one of Cunt's letters though, because the last one only took me like an hour and I got Shadow Step out of it, which was a really good deal for me. In all honesty, I was kind of starting to like the guy. He gave me good runes and interesting quests to do. Maybe he wasn't such a bad person after all. Wait, Farad? Who the fuck is Farad, and why have they sent me 3 letters? Mordots. Ravenholt's agents have learned that you are delivering artifacts to an entity known to you only as Cunt. I'm afraid you are being played for a fool. Yeah, well, no shit, I could have told you that. Come to Ravenholt Manor at once. We do not begrudge you for your errors, but the situation must be dealt with swiftly. I cannot say more in this letter. You will be given more information when you arrive. Regards, Farad. Okay, I no longer think that it's just Cunt messing with me in these letters. I think that the letters themselves are the problem. You guys realize where I just half-stoned away from? Tarren Mill, the place right next to Ravenholt Manor, and now I'm here in fucking Orgrimmar? These bastards are trying to mess with my head. They're trying to fuck with my mental during the leveling race. I mean, I'm still gonna go because it's interesting, but if these guys waste my time during the race, I'm gonna burn their manor to the ground. One Zeppelin, flight path, and mounted jaunt later, I made it to Ravenholt Manor to speak with the man himself.
Interest ya in a pint?
Farad told me that Cunt's real name was Chaos Blackwood and that he was a powerful mage working with the Syndicate. Man, you're telling me that the ominous anonymous person I've been sending magical artifacts to wasn't trustworthy? I am so fucking surprised. Apparently the next letter I was due to receive from Cunt, and no, I'm not going to start calling him Chaos, to me he will always be a cunt, was intercepted by these guys ahead of time. As always with Cunt's letters, he had wanted me to go into a dungeon to retrieve a magical artifact for him. This time it would have been Zul'Farrak, and the item was called the Talisman of Kazdor. And Farad still wanted me to complete this job like I normally would, except rather than just handing in the item at the dead drop zone, I had to first bring it back here so that he and his men could tamper with it. Okay, that seems straightforward enough to me. I will get it done immediately after I finish the leveling race. And speaking of the race, this little trip to and from Ravenholt Manor had taken a non-zero amount of time. A non-zero amount of time which I had not spent leveling. As a direct result of this, while I was waiting for the Zeppelin back to Orgrimmar, I looked in the guild tab and noticed that Jom had also hit level 46. Suffice to say, this was not good because I was only 5% of the way into 46 myself, which meant at least for the moment, Jom had caught back up. But I wasn't really bothered by this. Jom could get ganked and slowed down at any point in time. He'd probably already handed in all of his current quests. I had a few left to hand in myself. I could still win this thing easily. And at this point in the the video, you might be asking, Mordot, where's Gnomragon? You spoke about it at the start of the video, you know that it exists, why haven't you gone there during the leveling race? And the simple answer is that myself and the others wanted to go to Gnomragon as soon as Phase 3 went live, but we couldn't because Blizzard decided to play a very funny prank on us instead. Since the servers took a while to come back online on launch night, we decided to postpone the Gnomragon run until, well, right now. What an amazing transition! However, this particular run was quite normal and there isn't really a lot worth talking about from it. We made it through the entire raid without wiping once, apart from this one, and the whole process was just very smooth and straightforward. Thunderplug dropped the hypercharged Gear of Devastation, which I managed to barely win by rolling a single number higher than Jom, and surely this was a sign that I was going to win the leveling race. After all, at the end of this run, I was most of the way up to level 47, and Jom was still at level 46, which meant even if I was still behind, it was only by a small amount, which was a gap I knew I could close. But then Jom asked us if we could go and kill the rare spawn up the tunnel, which was a bit confusing because it doesn't drop anything relevant now that Phase 3 is out. However, none of us can turn down a request from the man himself, so back up the tunnel we went. We engaged the ambassador, and as we did so, I realised why Jom wanted us to do this, because sure enough, as soon as the ambassador hit the floor, Jom hit level 47, and for the first time since the race began, he was now actually in the lead. This would have been an appropriate time for me to start panicking, which makes sense because that's what I did. However, I didn't let it overwhelm me because I knew if I just stayed focused, I could still catch back up. However, for the moment, I was going to allow Jom to keep his leveling lead because we were both going to go to Zul'Farrak and I can't really overtake him when we're in the same dungeon together. Similar to the Gnomragon run, there wasn't a huge amount to talk about here. We partied up with my man Zindo, somebody I will be talking to you about in a future video, had ourselves a group slumber party, and then went and committed just a little bit of mass murder. As a treat, not long into it I hit level 47, which meant I was sort of not really caught up to Jom, and then one by one we took out every boss in the dungeon until we got to Chief Ukors and his buddy Ruzulu, one of which dropped the Ace of Dunes. Jom won it, which was fair enough, and then later in the run we saw Boots of Avoidance drop, and guess who won those? That's correct, also Jom. What can I say, the guy just never loses, except for the fact that he's about to lose this fucking leveling race, isn't he? Anyway, once we were out of the dungeon, it was time for me to go back into the dungeon. After all, I still had to find a certain magical artifact. As I stealthed back inside, I was confident that I could complete this mission in record time. After all, as far as I'm aware, Zul'Farrak doesn't have any goddamn stables. The first thing I found was this clay vessel, which had a vile concoction inside it telling me to use it on a bubbling cauldron, which is exactly what I did, allowing me to loot this Ward of the Dead. I used it on the lit up grave and it gave me the Offering of Flesh. Similar to the two halves of a key in Shadowfang Keep, I had to find an Offering of Bone to combine with it. I then headed up the giant staircase and found a locked box which required an emblem of blood magic in order to be opened. I made the assumption that the Offerings of Flesh and Bone would combine into the emblem and that I was nearly done. I headed over to the Basilisk boss, and much like the one in the graveyard, he also had a lootable sack next to him as well as a cauldron. Now the logical, obvious, reasonable thing to conclude from this situation is that you would need to go and get another one of those concoctions, throw it into the cauldron, kill the boss and loot the bag. But I'm not what you would call a logical thinker because I'm built different. So I tried to sap the boss, which doesn't work because he's immune to it, popped my Vanish, and then tried to blind the boss after just finding out that he's immune to crowd control. My life is a joke, and that series of events was the punchline. Anyway, with the additional brain cell that I'd acquired from that experience, I went back into the dungeon, got myself a second concoction, threw it into the cauldron and retrieved the Offering of Bone. Combined both of the items together to make Blood Magic Essence, which distinctly was not the item that I needed, but famously, I cannot read, so I went straight back up the stairs and then got confused as to why I still couldn't open the box. After a moment, I finally grew myself a prefrontal cortex and used it to deduce that there was something else in the dungeon I still needed to find, and at this point I started searching high and low for the final thing I needed to complete this quest. And I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I spent nearly 30 minutes combing this place over, checking every little crack, every tiny little crevice, every fucking... Then I realised you can actually get to these canopies on top of this wall, and I found the thing I was looking for, crafted the emblem of blood magic, used it on the chest, got the talisman of Kazdor, and made my way out of the dungeon. And you might be thinking that I just threw the entire leveling race because that whole process took me like an hour and I was behind in the race before I started it, but Jom is just the cutest guy ever because he actually stopped leveling while I was doing this since he knew what I was doing didn't involve getting experience points, which means I'm still behind, but not as behind as I would have been. Halving to Orgrimmar, I got a portal to the Undercity and travelled back to Ravenholt Manor to hand in the talisman. The gnome in the basement rigged it with an explosive, and at this moment I realised that the plan to deal with Cunt was to just give him a letter bomb.
Be seeing you.
I went over to the dead drop zone to hand in the rigged artifact and then went back to Ravenholt Manor to get not one but 2 rewards. The rune turned out to be Honour Among Thieves, which was very nice, very epic, but the real prize was this cloak. I'm not going to go on a whole tangent about it because this video is already too long, but trust me when I say this cloak is fucking sick. I headed over to Searing Gorge to use the final quest item I prepared before the race began, the Grimesilt Outhouse Key. Handing in its quest, I reached level 48 and the final stages of the leveling race were underway. Did a bit of questing here, took a flight down to Gromgo, had a little nap, handed in a quest, and then took a flight down to Booty Bay. Found the Eye of Cthulhu just chilling in one of the pirate ships. I don't know what the fuck this is about.
You are already dead.
Bit off more than I could chew with the pirates, and at this point decided, you know what, time to call it a night. I didn't really have a choice in the matter either because the fucking servers were going down, so John and myself decided we would finish our little contest tomorrow. The end was in sight, and for my first quest of the day, I decided to take a third trip down to the marsh to finally deal with this fucking ogre. I then went and handed in Tiara of the Deep before travelling to Senjin Village to hand in a quest to Master Gadrin. I immediately followed this up by going down to Tanaris, where I started an absolute questing spree. I started with the Waste Wonder Bandits, and as I did so, I went into panic overdrive. Jom had just made it from level 48 to 49, and I was only halfway there. But in my desperation, I had one final mediocre ace up my sleeve. My plan was to stay at level 48 for as long as possible so that John would think I'd stalled out and no longer had the opportunity to win. As a result of this, he might slow down his own leveling pace thinking that his victory was assured, but at that point I would allow myself to hit level 49 and then hand in every single quest I had in one go, potentially propelling me back into the lead. Was it a good plan? Of course not. Was it the only plan I could come up with on the spot? Maybe. All of that time I spent free questing, all of the effort I'd put into the race itself. John might have won the first 2 of these things, but this time it was going to be me. Why? Because I'm built different. The time had arrived, my quest log was dummy thick and it was time to cash in on that dopamine. Handing in Andrew Firebeard's head, I hit level 49 and the finale was upon us. And only 3 minutes after this, due to all of the questing that I did, I was already 30% of the way into it. Then I headed back inside Zul'Farrak on my own because I didn't get enough of the troll tempo in the actual dungeon run earlier, started fighting the elite mobs 1v1 and promptly got my shit kicked in. Wait, where's my music gone? Why is everything quiet now? Where's my hype? Where's my adrenaline? I didn't sign up for this. This isn't part of the script. What's going— Fuck! Son of a bitch! Well hey, at least now all of you can cross off that free space on your bingo cards. I mean, what is there to really say? I did my best and it wasn't good enough. John had planned better and played better, and as a result he had earned this victory. I carried on questing for a bit and then figured out how I wanted to hit level 50. During phase 2 I spent most of my time there, and it was also where I started the leveling race, which meant it was a fitting place to end it. That's right, I was finally going to go back to Myrone. The party was assembled, we made our ways inside, and much like every dungeon I've shown you in this video, there wasn't a huge amount worth talking about. I know that every time I bring up a dungeon in this series it kind of just gets glossed over, but in my defense our characters got given a shit ton of tren in Season of Discovery. The 5-man leveling dungeons just don't really pose any threat. Or if you guys preferred, I could start narrating these dungeons in excessive detail like this. Fearlessly, we engaged both of the Hydras. I pressed mutilate, typed in the chat, and then they were dead. See what I mean? Anyway, enough stalling. Time to show you the final level up. Near the end of the dungeon, on a random pack of insignificant earth elementals, I basked in the piss yellow glow of the level up animation one final time in phase 3, as I hit level 50. We finished up the remaining bosses in the dungeon, I half-stoned out, and that's where my recording ended. If the ending of this video seems a bit rushed, that's only because the ending of this video was a bit rushed. Originally I thought I was going to have this video out on Star Wars Day, but it's not Star Wars Day, you guys. It's the 18th of May, or whenever the fuck you're watching this. I had some delays in the production, including but not limited to some serious brain fog. It got so bad that I started playing retail again, which went about as well as you'd expect.
What the fucking Christ? Lucky there's a family guy! Lucky there's a family.
Hopefully the next WoW video doesn't take nearly this long, but you know what? I'm not going to make any promises just in case. Shout out to everyone who's messaged me in-game about the videos. It's still a very surreal experience for me.
I'm not a high enough level.
It's gotten to the point where even Jom is now getting messaged in-game about these videos, so sincerely, thank you guys very much for all of your support. And that includes you, comment goblins. Go write something funny down there, maybe I'll pin it. Anyway, that's enough yapping out of me for one lifetime. Thanks for watching the fucking video, and I'll speak to all of you next time.
The drums of war thunder once again.
Try doing it with your hand and you'll see how fucked up it is.